Welcome to the Health Design Leadership Podcast with author, speaker, and leadership coach Carol Phillips. We're here to help you sharpen your leadership skills and discover the best ways to build great teams. So sit back and enjoy this episode of the Health Design Leadership Podcast with your host, Coach Carol.
Hello, leaders. I'm Carol Phillips. Welcome to the Health Design Leadership Podcast. Our goal is to help sharpen your leadership skills and prioritize the wellness of employees to create winning teams. Let's work together to create workplaces that are welcoming, kind, and inclusive. When business leaders and employees come together to help meet each other's needs, everyone wins. Our conversations on the podcast are meant to help all of us continue to learn from each other to develop winning leadership skills. I want to share something that someone wrote as a comment on one of my LinkedIn posts. I posted a graphic I created that said, "Start acting like your employees are the best thing since sliced bread, then watch the magic happen." Hint, they are. I wanted to convey the message that when we treat our team members with lots of respect, positivity, and excitement, they will likely respond in kind because people tend to follow the leader and model the same behaviors they experience from their superiors. People contributed great comments on the post, but there was one that really hit the nail on the head. The comment was made by Sammy Kinlaw, and he wrote, quote, "Our employees are the lifeblood of the organization. They are on the front lines and are making the magic happen. This is why it's so crucial to acknowledge their efforts and reward their hard work," unquote. Thank you, Sammy. Yes, our team members work very hard every day, and our respect, support, and positive feedback is needed to balance and encourage them to stay engaged. Now, let's talk about today's guest. Peter Richard is the general manager at XMA Corporation and has been instrumental in leading the company through nearly 2 decades of transformative growth. Recently, under Peter's dynamic leadership, XMA was recognized as the #1 best place to work in New Hampshire, a testament to his commitment to fostering a workplace culture that values innovation, collaboration, and employee satisfaction. Peter also actively supports the growth and well-being of the community. I'll add that Peter is a leader who exudes positivity and respect for others. You don't have to spend much time with him to see why his team members are highly engaged and why XMA, Peter, and all their team members were recognized as the #1 best place to work in New Hampshire. A big congratulations to all of you. As we enjoy our conversation with Peter today, I encourage you to find 1 or 2 new leadership skills you can use to help your team thrive. Now, let's chat with Peter. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us today. To get started, can you share with us a little bit about your story and how you came into your leadership role? And please include XMA's Best Places to Work Award, as you are definitely part of that team's success.
Sure, happy to. So my story has a lot of twists and turns that little unexpected and fun. So I go back to 2006. Incidentally, it was January of 2006, 18 years ago, also on a snowy day like today. And I had just come back from a study abroad semester that I had extended to, let's call it a semester plus. And I was home with mom and dad and kind of just talking about what do the next few months look like. I'm going to graduate college soon, and money is something that is very important to have when you're just getting out of college, and that's something that I didn't have. And I think mom and dad were trying to say, okay, it's time to cut the cord here. So I got on Craigslist and started looking for jobs, and lo and behold, there was a part-time bookkeeper position at this company in Manchester called XMA. And I said, bookkeeper, I don't really know what that is, but I think I can do it based on what it sounds like. So I applied and was asked to come in pretty near immediate. So either they thought I was an exceptional candidate or they just really needed someone in the role, which I think it at the time may have been the latter. And interviewed and got the offer within about 24 hours. So I started here as a part-time bookkeeper in 2006, and then as the company grew and I, matured and both professionally and personally, I started to work in other areas of the company. I worked in sales, marketing, operations, always sort of maintained the finance background, and then moved into HR, which is really where things changed drastically, and for the better for me. So in HR, I had the responsibility of leading the team and leading the people, and didn't really know what that entailed until I started getting my feet wet. And quite frankly, just being just a kid, being asked to manage and lead an organization in that role was pretty scary. So I said, sure, I'll do it. There's no one else to do it, and I think I can be pretty good at it. So had some great mentors who said, here, follow me, and we'll join some organizations that, some trade organizations that can help you, and we'll mentor you along the way. And really as a testament to that. So fast forward, I've been here 18 years, and HR was a significant part of it. And learning people, I think, was what really has helped me become successful in both XMA and then outside of XMA, understanding that we all have the same needs. We all show up with the same wants, needs, and desires for ourselves, for our family. We all have similar issues that we bring to the workplace, and really recognizing that at the end of the day, we're all people and we all want to do a good job. And I think understanding that and looking at decisions and looking at how we run the business has been something that has led us to be successful in that capacity. So that's sort of the short story of how I got here. And then more recently, as you mentioned, in the fall of this past year, we were recognized as the #1 best company to work for by Business New Hampshire magazine, which was sort of a dream of mine. I had been looking at it for a number of years and saying, we should apply for this. This is something that I think we can do, but we were too small. And then as the company grew, we finally hit the headcount mark that we needed to be at. And I said, let's give it a try. So we pulled a team together. And this is the thing I think I'm most proud about is I didn't write the application. I asked my team, one, should we do this? And let them go off and kind of deliberate. And the answer was, yes, we should definitely do this. So, I'm feeling pretty good. And then two, to have them write the application, it just took me out of it. It took, one, because it was a very long application, but two, and really the real reason behind it was I wanted them to tell the story of who XMA was through their lens, through their experience, and not mine. And they did. And they did a great job. And they really represented us, I think, in the right spirit. And I got the email saying, hey, you're in the top 15, I think it was. And, that was exciting. I'm like, yes, we did it. Like, this is perfect. I'm happy with this. And we had to go through another series of interviews where people came on site and interviewed our team. And lo and behold, I got the email saying, you are #1. And after I fell out of my chair, got back up and basically ran around and said, we're #1. We knew it, but we really are. And everyone was just excited. Like, it was such an honor, and seeing every single employee just so happy to be part of it and be part of a company that really supports them. It's one of the highlights of my career. So sorry for that long-winded answer, but that's where we are. That's how we got here.
No, that's perfect. And I love, can hear your passion, and congratulations. That's amazing. And I love the fact that you invited them to write it. How wonderful is that? That's team spirit.
It definitely was. Obviously a little unnerving. You never know what someone might say, but you just have to trust. You have to trust your gut. And in this instance, I just knew that I knew we are the #1 place to work, and I knew that would come through.
Congrats. That's great. And
thanks.
I could hear when you were talking about your story, I could hear your self-confidence. And I loved how you talked about how each step you were like, well, I'm not sure exactly what this is, but I think I can do it, right? Because isn't a lot of life just having that confidence that, yes, I'm going to try this, even if I have to figure it out as I go along?
Definitely. And being willing to accept failure in some regard, but using it as a learning tool, to me, makes it not a failure. You're learning from what, a shortcoming may have been. And I I think that's looking at it that way is very important.
Yes. And even if you hear no, you're one step closer to somebody saying yes to you.
I always hear no, not now, which
Mm.
which some people may not like, but it's never, never a hard no.
Right, right. That's terrific. That's a great mentality to have. Peter, we know that communication plays a critical role in creating a positive and healthy workplace culture. As a leader, what are some communication strategies you use to help your team work best together?
I think I always start with honesty, and I don't mean that in necessarily the traditional sense. I mean it from just be real. There are things that we will all encounter in life and in work that we may not know the answer to. We may have never experienced it. And as a leader, oftentimes people are looking to you thinking that you may have experienced it, or you at least have the answer to it. And oftentimes we don't. We're learning just as much as everyone else around us is. And starting from that lens and just being transparent about it is important. I think that it gains buy-in. It also gains confidence and trust, that you're not making it up. You're not kind of trying to navigate it without really knowing. You're just being honest that I might not know the answer, but we'll figure it out together. So I think leading with honesty, transparency is critically important. There are things I can't share, or are just not public knowledge. And I think being honest about what you can talk about, what you can't talk about, and leading from that lens is important too. Just being transparent, and that builds trust. And then I think humility, making sure people know you're real. You can be fun, be yourself. Don't follow what you think you have to do. Be yourself, and that will help guide you along the way.
That's terrific. I love those. And when you were talking about being transparent and honest, that's what employees want. They want to know they can trust you and that you're being as honest as possible. I know sometimes when I'm working with business leaders, they feel like they have to know everything. They have to, if there's certain things that they can't reveal to employees, they come across as though they're hiding something. And employees would much rather hear, there are certain things I can tell you right now, there's certain things I can't tell you right now. And they respect that. They know that those situations are going to happen.
Agreed. And that's always been my experience. And just laying it out from the beginning is really, that will pay dividends.
Yes. Our brains are looking for, can we trust this person? Are they going to be honest with me? Are they going to be transparent? Not, are they perfect? Do they know everything? Right? We're going to be more comfortable when people are real with us. And then we're going to be more likely to be honest with our superiors and comfortable in that they're comfortable with that setting.
Agreed. One of the things that I think has helped guide me along the way, and this is a testament to XMA's president, is he always inspired me to remember that the decisions that we make impact the people who work for us. They impact the food that goes on the table. They impact the shoes that you put on their children's feet. And that when you think of it that way, it really changes your outlook, or your decision making. Yes, there are business decisions that I have to make, that we have to make, but remembering that these decisions have a real impact on real people is incredibly important. And I've always led with that. After he and I have, over the years have just developed that rapport with each other and talking about things like that. That's how I lead, and I thank him for that.
Yeah, I can see why you were voted number one, because those things are so critically important. And remembering that we need to be focusing as leaders on the employees and not skipping the employees and only working about the customers or clients, because when we're taking great care of the employees, they're going to take great care of the clients and the customers.
100%.
Yep. And that goes right into my next question. So let's talk about empathy and emotional intelligence, because I'm old enough to remember when empathy wasn't really on the radar of many business leaders, but I was also keenly aware of the unhealthy power dynamics that were present in too many workplaces. And regarding emotional intelligence, what I find is that business leaders are just beginning to learn what it is and the benefits of having this on their radar daily with their team. Please talk to us about how you use empathy and emotional intelligence to not only create a productive environment, but to create a caring environment.
I think I teed myself up with my answer for the last question pretty well. So kudos to me.
Yes.
I think it goes back to remembering that we are all people. And again, I know I started with this, but at the end of the day, we all get up, we all have to do the same thing each day to support ourselves, our families, our friends. And keeping that as part of your decision making is incredibly important. There are things that will happen to us in our lives that might not be so great, and it's part of life. But remembering that you could have that happen to you just as easy as it could happen to me. And if, oh, by the way, maybe it happens to an employee, that doesn't make them a bad employee. That makes them an employee that's real, that's living a life that is something that, we all are. And we all have these situations that we have to deal with. And thinking of it through the lens of, a mental health crisis or substance misuse, these things are real. They happen in our community. So when an employee has an issue like that, keep in mind that that's reality right now. And unfortunately, that's someone's reality. And, as an employer, being empathetic is understanding that you have an obligation to help the employee to some regard. Certainly not to a point where you're enabling bad behavior, but as an employer, I personally feel that I have an obligation to help someone in a situation like that. So being empathetic is incredibly important. And I think that, dovetails right into emotional intelligence very easily, just putting those pieces all together. Again, looking at your decision making from a more holistic view than just what your income statement may say or your balance sheet might look like. There's ways to improve the overall situation, literally, but also while looking at it with through an emotionally intelligent view. I hope that answers your question.
Right, absolutely. I love that. And they go so well together. And just having that mindset of caring and remembering that each person is a human who's deserving of respect and consideration. And if they're having an issue, well, how would I feel if I was in their shoes? And over the years, I can think back different situations, work situations I was in where you're having a hard time and you go to your supervisor to share, and their reaction is hugely important and impactful in your life because it's usually pretty black or white, whether they're kind and supportive and they're trying to work with you to make everything go smoothly versus not being supportive and you feel alone, you feel the pressure, you feel the stress, and it just makes your situation that much worse.
And I think the other thing I would add to it is you're exactly right. Bringing something to your manager that's might not be something you want to share, but being a good manager, you're able to listen to it and able to hear it and able to frame it and how can you help. The other part of it that's challenging is that we do have a business to run, and you can't just be empathetic to every situation for as long as it may go on. There is that harsh reality that we do have a business, we do have shareholders to appease, and there's real needs to run the business in a profitable manner. But I still go back to, if you treat your people well and you lead with honesty and transparency, then they will help you do that even in their darkest time. To me, it's a no-brainer. But it's not lost on me at all that there are real needs to a business too.
Yes, and that I think the most healthy organizations are the ones that recognize that they need to have that good balance between the business leaders communicating what they want and need in an honest, transparent way, and employees sharing what they want and need, and business leaders welcoming that and working together to figure out how to make things work and move forward.
I agree. And also just as I think about XMA and how we've evolved and how we've grown, we've gone from a very small company to, a mid-sized company at this point. And all of those things look very different for different size organizations. So there's definitely no one size fits all approach. There's definitely no one answer to solve every equation, but you have to apply what's realistic and what your company can support too.
Right, exactly. And when you're being empathetic, employees aren't expecting you to give endlessly. They understand that the company has needs. But if you're responding empathetically and say, well, this is what I can do for you, and I'm sorry you're going through this. So I'm sure that you have had many experiences where you've been in those situations where you may not be able to do everything that they need, but you're showing them that you care along the way.
And we also can't lose sight of the fact that sometimes saying no is also the right answer. And that's, not just in business, that's in life. Sometimes you can be taken advantage of where, you're trying to do the right thing, but maybe it's gone on for too long, and maybe the right answer is to say no and, sort of, reshape the conversation a little bit. So I think it really depends on the situation. It can go multiple ways.
And sometimes saying no pushes people out of their comfort zone and helps them to get to a better place.
Definitely, definitely.
All right, Peter, I want to ask you about inclusive leadership, which I love, as I vividly remember having jobs when I was young and naive and insecure. And I remember being very aware of when myself and others were purposely excluded from a variety of opportunities, especially in situations where it would have been so easy for the leaders to make people feel included. What are some of your thoughts on the importance of leaders creating and supporting an inclusive mindset?
I think that it's number one, it's incredibly important. And, from my perspective, having diversity of thought, having diversity of opinion is super important. My own experiences are my reality, but that's not the case for everyone. I need to learn from what others have experienced or what others have done to make my decisions more holistic and more well-rounded. I think back to me starting here as a young professional. Had I not had the opportunity to participate in, more senior level meetings or more senior level decisions throughout my career, I don't know that I would maybe approach it the same way as I do today. But making sure that you include that up and comer, you include that new person in the organization, you include that person who has a very different opinion or perspective than you do, and the result will be a stronger, well-rounded, well thought through decision. I think one of my favorite stories is, it's actually a little bit outside of XMA. I have the good fortune of doing a lot of nonprofit board work, and I had one of our younger employees approach me about getting involved and how maybe she could also do some different board work. And I had just the right prospect in mind. We like to not call it voluntelling, but it was one of those situations where it was a good role, but she was very apprehensive to jump onto a nonprofit board, and rightly so. She's just out of college, and a board of directors seems like a very scary thing. Once you're involved in it, that that's not the case, but that wasn't her experience. So I offered to sort of be her board mentor, and brought her on. And I wasn't even part of that board at that time, but brought her on. I knew a couple people that were running it and said, this is someone who I think has a really bright future with your organization. Let me help her for, let's say 3 to 6 months, and just kind of shadow what she's doing, answer questions that she may not understand. And I think you'll have a strong board candidate, in that amount of time. And I think looking back on it, that it's just such an easy thing to do, but we take things like that for granted. And that's kind of who I am.
That's terrific. And if we just are on the lookout for it, there's so many opportunities where we can help others or mentor. And that's amazing that you were kind enough to do that and saw that that could be a great transition.
Thanks.
Okay, Peter, it's time for Coach Carol's quick quiz.
Oh boy, I'm ready, I think.
I'm going to throw some questions at you just for fun, and so our listeners can learn more about you. There are 5 questions. Give me the first thing that comes to mind. Number 1, I know you love to travel. If you could relive 1 hour of one trip, what would it be?
1 hour of one trip. That's a tough question, but my go-to is always London. As I mentioned, I had a study abroad experience, and that was in London, and just was such a formidable part of my upbringing. 1 hour, though, I'm not sure I could pick an hour, but let's just say any experience that involves London, and going back to those early days when I really had just moved out of home. I was not living on campus, and just being thrown into an international cosmopolitan city, around no one that I knew, and just that freedom and power. Like maybe it was that the 1 hour that I first, took a little adventure out into the city and said, wow, this is where I'm going to live for, 6 or so months. And just that feeling of, anticipation, excitement, all of those feelings. Maybe that's the 1 hour I would relive.
Nice. I know, just that feeling of, wow, there's a big world out there.
Right, coming from little New Hampshire and seeing, different cultures in a huge city in a incredible location. That just, for me, that's probably it.
And sometimes isn't it mind-boggling when you look around and think, there are a lot of people in this world?
Sure is. Sure is.
All right. Question 2, pasta or pizza?
Pizza. Easy.
What do you like on it?
I'm a pretty simple guy. I usually like a wood-fired pizza, prosciutto, mozzarella. Pretty simple, like nothing too crazy. Maybe a little spinach.
Nice.
I'm thinking of 900 Degrees, and I have no relation to them, but I love their pizza.
Delicious. All right, number 3. If you had to watch the same movie every week for a year, what movie are you choosing and why?
Mrs. Doubtfire. I just love that movie. I remember watching it as a kid and thinking how funny it was, and just the lessons I think that are in it that you realize as an adult are very powerful, and I think that's a piece of it. But also just the simplicity of it. It is such a funny movie. Robin Williams is the best. I can almost recite all of the lines. It's pretty ridiculous, but it's definitely a number 1 for me.
And it is a great movie with a lot of great lessons. And I think one of the funniest things was that he wasn't really believable when he was dressed up, but people fell for it in the movie, which was kind of part of the hilarity.
That's Robin Williams.
I love that. All right, number 4. You can spend an hour talking to any famous person, alive or deceased. Who is it and what do you want to ask them?
Queen Elizabeth II. As you know, I am a huge royal fan. As I mentioned, lived in London. But when I look at her and look at all of the things that she lived through and experienced, and really who she had to become to serve as the monarch, is just incredible. The story it's wild to me to think about, just a young woman, finding out while she's on a safari in Africa that her father's passed away and that she is now the queen of the United Kingdom is just, it's mind-blowing to me. And what would I ask? I don't know. I think I would want to know, I guess, just what was it like? What was it like living through the war? What was it like? I think of her meeting all of these major heads of state and being just a young female at that time must have been so intimidating. And how'd she ever manage? And manage for so long. It's just incredible to me.
I'm also in awe of her story. I love that you chose that as an answer because it is, I think about her and the length of her reign and what she went through and how times changed so drastically over the years. And she was always such a classy person. It really is mind-boggling. And when you think about how, like they say, she came out of the treehouse as the queen, not expecting.
Right, exactly.
And then she's dealing with a very patriarchal society. Yeah,
it's incredible. And then just the respect that people around the world had for her. It's so incredible. And it's not something that we have in the United States. We don't have a figurehead like that just everyone has such a high regard for. And that, I think that also is an element of just the allure for me.
I agree, because the things that I love about positive leadership are some of the things that she brought to the table when they weren't really popular.
Definitely. She was a trailblazer.
Yes. All right, number 5. One of your team members has to take an extended leave from work and is guilt-ridden. What's your reaction?
I think leading with the why and just understanding it. And again, going back to the basics that we're all people, we all have things that we have to deal with, whether you want to have to deal with it as an employer or, your employee has to deal with it. That's life. And there's no reason to make anyone feel any worse than they probably already are. So understanding the ask, understanding what's going on. I think one of my trademark questions is, how can I help? How can we help it as an organization? I think that's really it. I wouldn't get into too many more details, just how can we help?
Yes, and the simple things are the most important things often.
Absolutely.
I know with me, when somebody says they empathize and they say, what can I do to help you? That's just so important. And it goes so far with employees wanting to be productive and wanting to stay where they're working and not be looking for another job because we're not meeting their emotional needs.
Right. Definitely.
That's terrific. Thank you so much, Peter, for being such a great sport with those questions.
No, thank you. Those are fun.
Before we wrap up today, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh boy. I would share that, kind of going back to everything I think I've weaved through our conversation is just be human. Understand that employees are going through all different types of things as well as you are. And I think that's probably where I'll start, is to not overlook your own needs as a leader. Make sure that you have an outlet to talk through things that you might be going through. You're only as good to your team as you are yourself. So making sure you've got yourself in check is number one. However that works for you, whether that's, exercise or whatnot, just make sure you're doing it and make sure you're keeping an eye on what makes you tick. And then 2, just keep it real. Ask the questions that need to be asked, ask the hard questions, give honest feedback, be willing to accept honest feedback. And I think those are just the simple ingredients for success. And I don't want to complicate it. So I think just keeping that in mind, those 2 things are very, very important.
I love that. Simple ingredients for success. And how true is that? Just kindness and being real goes so far to help the team be successful.
Definitely.
Awesome. Peter, thank you so much for being with us today and for all the great work you do to model positive leadership. You're a wonderful asset to the community, and I really appreciate the time you've spent with us today.
Carol, thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope to help in the future.
Great. Sounds great. Thanks, Peter.
Awesome.
Peter, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about you?
Sure. Definitely. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. And on there, you'll find, my email, phone number, and all of that. And just feel free to shoot me a message. I'm on it way more than I probably should be, so you'll get a quick response.
Sounds great.
Thanks.
Listeners, you can also learn more about Peter and XMA Corp at xmacorp.com. Thank you to all the business leaders who are making their companies the best places to work. Be on the lookout for our next podcast and make today a great day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Health Design Leadership Podcast with Carol Phillips. Be sure to click on the subscribe button so you won't miss any new episodes. Join our online leadership dream team at askcoachcarol.com. If you're looking for an engaging speaker for your next event or an effective trainer to strengthen your leadership team, contact Coach Carol today. Thanks again for listening, and make it a great day.